I still remember exactly how it felt standing in front of my parents' house in Bakersfield, holding a warm tray of cinnamon apple pie I had baked since 5 a.m. that morning to make it in time for Christmas dinner. It was Mom's old recipe. Hand-rolled crust, Granny Smith apples mixed with brown cinnamon and a touch of rum. That dish used to be her favorite, and I brought it every holiday as a habit, or maybe as a desperate effort to hold on to whatever was left of the word family. The door opened, and I stepped into a house filled with the sound of Christmas music from an old speaker, and the smell of roasted meat wafting from the kitchen. Mom was folding napkins on the table. Dad stood stirring cranberry sauce on the stove. No one smiled. No one said, "Merry Christmas, Autumn," like they did every other year. I hadn't even set the pie down when my father's voice cut through the air, dry as old timber. "Autumn, if you don't return that money, then turn around and leave this house immediately." I froze. For a split second, I thought he was making some twisted holiday joke. But there was no flicker in his eyes, no blinking, no chuckle to ease the blow. "What money?" I asked, my voice raspy with cold and disbelief. $42,000 from Mom's savings, my brother Kyle said from the dinner table. He wore a reindeer sweater, but his face held not a trace of humor. I turned to Mom. She said nothing, staring into the void. Her hands clutched the edge of the tablecloth so tight, her nails nearly dug through the fabric. "You think it was me?" I asked again, my voice rising. "You actually believe I stole from Mom?" No one answered. Not a single sympathetic glance. Not one word of defense. Even Rachel, my sister, who once cried in my arms during her divorce, sat silent, eyes fixed on her soup like a statue. I gripped the pie tray tighter. It suddenly felt like it weighed 20 pounds. The kitchen, once filled with laughter and the scent of butter, now felt like it could collapse at any moment. "Don't make this harder than it has to be, Autumn," Dad said coldly. "If you truly didn't do anything wrong, then prove it. Otherwise, don't come back." I set the pie down on the counter, slowly, as if placing something fragile and pointless. The tray made a dull metallic sound against the granite. Sharp, final. "I didn't take a cent from Mom," I said. "But thanks for showing me where I stand in this family." I turned around and walked to the door, my hands still freezing inside my leather gloves. No one followed. No one asked if I was okay. No one called my name. As I stepped outside, snow began to fall. I walked across the frozen driveway, each step pressing deeper into the realization that I no longer belonged in that house. At least not in their eyes. When I got into my car, turned the key and sat behind the wheel, my father's words echoed inside my head. "Return the money, or don't ever come back." I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't slam the steering wheel like they do in the movies. I just started the engine, pulled my coat tight, and drove toward the highway. Leaving behind the house I used to call home, I pulled into the parking lot of a late-night cafe in Fresno, where a faded neon light cast streaks across my windshield as if trying to read my face. Drizzle mixed with snow clung to the side mirrors, and my hands trembled slightly as I turned off the engine. 36 years old, a financial director at a West Coast construction firm, and I had just been thrown out of my family's house, accused of stealing money. Inside, I ordered a double espresso. The purple-hailed cashier didn't ask why I collapsed into a corner seat, gripping the warm paper cup like a lifeline. Thankfully, she didn't say, "Merry Christmas." I had no idea how I would have reacted. The strangest part wasn't the accusation itself. It was how nobody said anything. Rachel, the same person who clung to me for 2 hours after her miscarriage last year, wouldn't look me in the eye. Mom, the one I wired $1,200 to help cover her medical bills back in April, hadn't opened her mouth. And Kyle, who usually argued with me, led the charge this time, proudly. No one asked, "Autumn, what's really going on?" No one questioned, "Are you sure it wasn't a mistake?" No one even considered the possibility I was innocent. Just silence. Complicity. A chill heavier than the sleet falling outside. I leaned my head against the wall, trying to remember the last time I truly felt like I belonged in that family. Maybe it was last year, when I drove across state lines, just to take Mom to her friend's wedding. Kyle? 3 years ago, I co-signed a short-term advance for him, $8,000, after he got fired from a startup for budget mismanagement. Rachel once stayed in my apartment for nearly 7 months, post-divorce. I never asked for anything back. Yet here they were, all on the same side against me. I scrolled through my phone, rereading a missed call from Dad 2 days earlier. That might have been the first sign. I had refused to send Kyle money for a new car, saying, 3 times is enough. Dad's reply? You don't know how to share. I thought he was just frustrated. I didn't realize it was a warning shot. A new message lit up the screen. Rachel, you need to understand that Mom's very hurt. Maybe you didn't mean to, but you let things get out of control. It'd be better if you cleared this up before it gets worse. I clenched the phone tighter. No, how are you? No trace of doubt in my innocence. Every word read like a verdict already passed. The only way to fix it now was to confess. The espresso had gone cold. I stood, left the cafe, and felt the wind whip through my coat collar like it was reminding me, no one's waiting for you. Back at my small apartment near the marina, neighbors' Christmas lights still twinkled despite the icy air. I didn't turn the lights on. I just stood there, staring at the artificial tree still packed away since early December. I had planned to decorate it with Mom and Rachel today. I had even prepared the silver ribbon, red bulbs, and the glass star we used to top the tree with when we were kids. Instead, I sat alone and opened my laptop. I tried logging into Mom's bank account, the one I had helped her set up, though I hadn't touched it since. Access denied. The account security settings had been changed 3 weeks earlier. I opened another window. My company email, not for work, but for a file I never thought I'd need personally. Signs of financial manipulation within a household. It was a training document I once wrote for new interns. Now, every line pointed directly at what was happening to me. I picked up a pen and wrote a single sentence on a blank sheet of paper. If they've all agreed in silence, I'll break it with the truth. That night, I didn't sleep. I made a list. Who had account access, the timeline of security changes, every time Kyle asked for money, every time Rachel borrowed my credit card, and every message or email I could cross-reference her. I stayed awake until 3 a.m., lying still in the dark. Not because of the caffeine, but because the memories kept coming, like waves breaking over and over. Not loud, not violent. Just steady, cold, and enough to shatter everything I once thought was solid. Maybe it didn't start at the Christmas dinner. Not when Dad told me to return the money or leave. It had started long before. I just didn't want to see it. When I got hired at Carson and Hill, Mom said, "Happy for you, but don't let your job make you forget to settle down." When I bought my first apartment with money I had saved, Kyle muttered, "Well, it's easy when you've got cash." Even on my birthday 3 years ago, when I took the whole family to a small Italian restaurant in Napa, Rachel had half joked, half snapped, "You only like places that require a platinum card to book." I used to laugh it off. I thought it was just what families did. Spoke fun, push limits, and then laugh it off with a hug. But looking back now, every scattered moment had pieced itself into a picture I could no longer ignore. I had outgrown them. And they didn't like it. Not because I flaunted my success, I never did. I didn't post vacation pictures, didn't brag about bonuses, didn't bring work into dinner. I was the one quietly covering meals, wrapping thoughtful gifts, calling Mom every Sunday night to check on her. Yet somehow, I became the suspicious one, for one simple reason. I was different. I stepped out onto the balcony. The cold mist clung to the steel railing in tiny droplets. the city was still. Streetlights cast a dull amber over sleepy rooftops. I took a deep breath, trying to shake the tightness in my chest. I remembered when Kyle lost his job. I was the one who called a friend at a logistics company to recommend him. They hired him. 3 months later, they let him go for misplacing 2 shipments worth nearly $10,000. I didn't blame him. I quietly paid the penalties to keep them from pressing charges. Kyle never knew. Rachel was always a little short. A bit of tuition for her interior design class, a bit of security deposit for her new place, a bit of prenatal expenses. I never said no. Each time I transferred the money, I sent the same simple text: "Take care of yourself." And what did I get in return? An accusation. Averted eyes. A cold message that read like I was a stranger. I went back inside and opened the drawer where I kept my records, a gray folder I'd held onto for 7 years. Inside, every dollar I had ever sent them. Wire transfers, receipts, invoices, messages, emails. Not because I wanted to collect it, but because I needed to remember how hard I tried. I picked up one page. $2,500 for Rachel back in March. Noted: prenatal checkup plus initial expenses. I remembered her saying, "I'll pay you back as soon as I'm stable." 6 months later, she bought a new leather couch and posted it proudly on Facebook. Never mentioned the money again. An email from Mom resurfaced in my mind. Sent at 2 a.m. after Dad had a blood pressure scare? Autumn. I'm sorry to ask again. But the insurance hasn't cleared yet, and I don't know where else to turn for the $3,000. I know you're busy, but you're all I've got. I wired the money within 2 hours. Mom replied with a single smiling emoji. I looked around my apartment. No Christmas presents, no tree, no music. But there was one truth shining clearly in the silence. I owed them nothing. Not money, not affection, not blind loyalty. And if they chose to shut me out of their family, I would go. But I would take the truth with me. I opened my laptop, logged into the remote access monitoring tool our firm had been testing. I entered my parents' home address, narrowed the timeline to when the withdrawals happened, and requested a full trace of all device access logs. The next morning, I arrived at the office earlier than usual. The coffee machine in the company kitchen hadn't even finished brewing, but I didn't have time to wait. I needed the servers. I needed access to internal systems. And more than anything, I needed to start investigating, not as a daughter who'd been rejected by her family, but as a professional who knew how to uncover financial truth. I sat at my desk and logged into Carson & Hill's risk analysis platform. For the past 2 months, I had been leading a project detecting fraudulent transactions in a network of trust funds, where patterns were often hidden behind proxy accounts, internal transfers, or third-party device logins. Ironically, the same techniques now mirrored what was happening with my mother's savings account. I began with a simple query: any unusual activity recorded from my parents' home IP address, spanning from November 10th through Christmas Eve. The data downloaded in minutes. What I saw made my skin crawl. 3 logins to Mom's savings account on November 13th, 18th, and 21st, all came from a new device, a Samsung Galaxy Tab using the Chrome browser, not the old iPad I had originally helped her set up. The IP address matched the home Wi-Fi. But the device registration? It was tied to a Gmail account. Kyle Finance 89. I froze, heart pounding. That email address had come up nearly a year ago, when Kyle tried to pitch investors on a personal budget app he never managed to build. I remembered because I was the one who told him to stop pitching without a working MVP. I kept digging. 3 separate transactions, each withdrawal between $14,000 and $15,000. Just under the federal threshold for mandatory reporting. This wasn't a mistake. It was calculated. Following the login history, I found a password change confirmation from the bank, dated November 12th, sent to an email I had never seen linked to Mom's account. rachel.mainstudio@gmail.com. I clenched the mouse. Rachel had used that same address to open an Etsy shop last year. She had once proudly told me she was about to launch a canvas art store. Now that email was set as the recovery contact for Mom's bank account. I straightened up and opened another window, this time accessing our user identity mapping tool, which linked devices to physical locations based on IP logs. The results sent a chill down my spine. 4 login sessions traced. 2 from the upstairs bedroom, Kyle's room, and 2 from the basement studio Rachel had converted into a workspace. All occurred during hours when Mom was away at medical appointments. I knew that, because I was the one who drove her. They hadn't just taken the money, they had waited, coordinated and used my own acts of care as the perfect cover. I pulled up Google Photos, locating a picture I had taken the day I took Mom to the clinic. She was seated beside me in the car, holding a bottle of water and her worn Bible. The photo had GPS coordinates, exactly 10 miles from the house. The timestamp read, 8:30 a.m. November. I noted everything, compiled it into a file I titled, Chrono, the Redemption Dossier. Not to threaten, not to retaliate, but to make sure that when I faced them again, the truth would be undeniable, impossible to twist or ignore. Part of me still couldn't believe I was doing this, investigating my own family. It felt like taking on a financial crime ring. But I knew this much: if I stayed silent, they would keep building a version of events that benefited them. And next time, the victim might not be me. It might be Mom. I printed all the documents, laminated the most critical evidence, and placed it inside the same black folder I used for board presentations. That afternoon, I called the one person I still trusted. Mr. Walter, an independent legal advisor who had once helped our firm through a financial misconduct case 3 years prior. I laid everything out. Sent the full file. Then I asked him one question. If I want to bring the truth to light without tearing the family apart, is there any way to do that? He paused for a long while, then answered slowly. Autumn, sometimes the truth doesn't destroy a family, it just reveals what they've been hiding all along. 3 days later, I received a reply from the internal surveillance unit at Atlantic First Bank, where my mother held her savings account. I had submitted a request as her authorized financial advisor, supported by the document she had signed earlier that year. Attached were 3 video files from the Fresno West branch's security cameras, along with a certified transaction report. I sat alone in a small meeting room on the 16th floor, white light glowing across the screen as the first video began to play. November 13th. A woman in a beanie, dark sunglasses, and a surgical mask entered the branch at 11:47 a.m. She pulled a white envelope from her handbag, presented an ID, signed a form, and walked away with a stack of cash. I zoomed in on the frame at second 35. She lowered her mask to speak with the teller. Sharp jawline. A mole near the left corner of her lips. No doubt about it. Rachel. I swallowed hard and fast-forward to the second clip. November 18th. A man in a brown coat with a close haircut walked in at 2 p.m. Same process, ID, documents, signature. But this time, no mask. No attempt to disguise himself. He was calm, joking with the teller like he owned the account. File. The third video made my skin crawl. November 23rd. Rachel again. Same beanie. Same furtive manner. But this time, she scribbled on the form in a hurry, misspelling Mom's name. Under the harsh light of the counter, her hand trembled as she signed. I shut the video and opened the signature comparison file sent by the bank. All 3 withdrawal slips were signed in the same slanted handwriting, with the distinctive hook in the letter W. Identical to a sticky note Rachel had once left on Mom's fridge. Don't forget your doctor's appointment at 3, R. I printed the clearest stills, annotated timestamps, and cross-checked them with Mom's phone GPS data, still synced to the Apple Health system I had installed for her last year. Each withdrawal took place while she was at different medical clinics. They hadn't just forged her signature. They had used the exact times I was driving Mom to her appointments, turning my care into the perfect alibi. I sent all the evidence to Mr. Walter, the attorney, with a note. Video footage, timestamps and GPS coordinates. Undeniable proof. The bank also provided copies of the withdrawal forms, signed, ID matched, and verified. One transaction even listed Kyle's own phone number as the contact. No one questioned it, since the account belonged to a well-known elderly client. I pushed back from the table, standing to look through the window at the parking lot below. January wind tilted the slender palm trees. I stood there, unmoved. Not angry. Not shaken. Just cold. I had everything I needed. The only question left was, what did they think I'd do with the truth? That evening, I drove to the Millview suburbs, where my parents lived in their terracotta-roofed house beneath the old oak tree. I didn't knock. I parked 2 blocks away, watching the living room lights still on. I pictured Kyle with his feet on the coffee table, Rachel steeping tea in the kitchen, and Mom, still believing her eldest daughter had betrayed her. From the back seat, I retrieved the black folder, organized chronologically. 3 transactions, 3 videos, 3 handwriting samples, and the access logs showing IP data tied to devices that weren't mine. I didn't text, didn't call. I simply wrote one line on the front of the folder. I didn't take the money, but I will take back the truth. Then I placed it gently at the front door, rang the bell, and walked away. I didn't look back. I didn't wait. I returned to the house in Millview on Sunday morning, 3 days after leaving the folder at the doorstep. Winter sunlight filtered through the tall oak trees, casting broken beams across the stone steps. I used to walk up those steps feeling like a daughter coming home. But today, every footstep was a quiet declaration. I was no longer someone they could dismiss. The door opened after my second knock. It was Mom. She wore a gray wool robe, hair unbrushed. Her face looked like she hadn't slept in 3 nights. Her eyes met mine hesitantly, like she wanted to speak, but didn't know where to start. "Can I come in?" I asked calmly. He stepped aside without a word. Kyle was on the sofa, legs propped up on the coffee table, phone in hand. When he saw me, he sprang to his feet, his expression shifting instantly. Rachel stepped out from the kitchen holding a cup of tea. She froze when our eyes met. Dad, who usually took a Sunday morning walk around the neighborhood park, wasn't back yet. No one offered me a seat. I didn't need one. I placed the document case on the coffee table and unlocked it. No rush, no noise. Every motion was deliberate. I pulled out 3 printed security camera stills and laid them neatly on the wooden surface. The soft music from the kitchen radio came to a sudden stop. Rachel set her teacup down so quietly the porcelain didn't make a sound. "We need to talk," I began. "About the $42,000 you accused me of taking." Kyle crossed his arms, trying to stay composed. "We've already said what we had to, Autumn. No one wanted this, but all the evidence pointed to you." "Did it?" I said with a soft laugh. "Here's Rachel at Atlantic First on November 13th. Here's Kyle on the 18th. And the third time, Rachel again on the 21st. I have the full videos, if you'd like to watch them." Rachel started to protest, but I raised my hand. I didn't need excuses. The withdrawal forms were all signed. I sent them to the law office for verification. They matched the handwriting to a note you left on Mom's fridge last month, Rachel. As for the recovery email and phone number, both were registered from this house's IP address, on a device labeled Kyle's tablet. Mom stood frozen, clutching the hem of her robe. "And Mom," I turned to her, my tone softer, "do you remember the day I took you to Valley Medical?" I snapped a photo of us in the car, planning to post it later. That picture has GPS data. It confirms where we were while Kyle was logging into your account from this house to change the security settings. She gasped, raising her hand to her mouth. I sat across from all three, resting my hand lightly on the folder. Way? I asked, not raising my voice. Why choose this way? If you needed money, I could have helped. I have helped. But this time, you didn't just take the money. You took my trust. Something no amount of money can buy back. Rachel looked down, her lips pressed tight. Kyle stayed silent. Mom's voice trembled as she finally spoke. I didn't know. They said it was a mistake you made when setting things up. Then the money disappeared. I believed them. I don't understand that tech stuff. No one asked me, I said slowly. No one gave me a chance to explain. Dad told me not to come back unless I returned the money. Rachel sent a message like I was dangerous. And you, Mom? You stayed silent. The silence returned. But this time, it wasn't complicity. It was consequence. I stood and gathered the folder, neatly stacking the pages but not putting them away. I didn't come to reclaim the money. I came to put the truth back where it belongs. If anyone has something to say, now is the time. The air in the living room remained heavy after I gave them one last chance to speak, but instead of an apology, all I received were averted gazes and broken phrases clinging to anything but the truth laid bare on the table. Kyle spoke first. His voice was calm but his eyes betrayed unease. You always act like you're better than everyone else, coming home like you're handing out gifts, like we should all be grateful you exist. You don't get it. It's not easy living in your shadow for 30 years. I looked at him. Not with anger or contempt, just emptiness. I don't live to cast shadows, I work because I have to take care of myself. If my effort makes you feel threatened, that's your issue, not my fault. Rachel still had her head down, but at my words she looked up. Eyes red, but her mouth curled bitterly. You always had everything: scholarships, a great job, a downtown apartment, a successful boyfriend. What about me? Mom and Dad always compared us. I just wanted to feel like I mattered too. And stealing was how you chose to matter? I asked, voice low but crystal clear. You didn't want to live in my shadow, so you made me the thief? Rachel didn't answer. She turned away. Mom stood motionless, clutching her robe as if holding together something unraveling inside. Dad entered in the middle of the tension, set his helmet on the shelf, and asked softly, "What's going on here?" Mom turned to him, slowly. Autumn proved she didn't take the money. He looked at me, then down at the folder still open on the table. Color-printed photos, matching signatures, footage from the security cameras. For a brief second, I saw something in his eyes that resembled regret. But it vanished faster than a blink. "So what do you want now?" he asked. "You want us all to kneel and apologize?" I smiled, for the first time that morning. Not out of joy, but because I finally understood how blurred our boundaries had become. I don't want apologies. I don't need redemption. I just want one thing clear. From today on, our relationship won't be what it used to be. I walked to the table, collected the documents, carefully placing each sheet into the leather folder. No one has the right to question my integrity without proof. No one gets to assume I'll come in and fix their mess, and no one gets to call my name when they need money, only to fall silent once they're done using me. No one reacted. Not a word broke the silence. I looked at Mom, my voice softer, but steady. You can call me if you need someone to listen, not if you just need a walking wallet. I'll answer. But if you stayed silent when they blamed me without asking a single question, then I'll stay silent too. I turned to Kyle and Rachel. You don't owe me explanations. I'm not obligated to forgive, but I have every right to walk away from this cycle. I walked to the door. This time, no one stopped me. Mom whispered my name. Barely audible. But I didn't pause. Before I closed the gray wooden door, I said one final thing. Thought I lost a family I belonged to. But now I know, I didn't lose anything. I just found myself. The door shut behind me, and for the first time in years, I didn't feel guilty for walking away. I wasn't running. I was simply leaving. As anyone should, when trust has been traded for convenience. 2 months after the final confrontation with my family, I stood on a small platform inside the community room at the Bakersfield Public Library. In front of me were about 10 people, mostly older women, a few silver-haired men, and a young woman sitting beside her grandmother. On the whiteboard behind me, written in bold marker, "Understand, to protect your personal finances." I was no longer the Autumn who used to drive 3 hours home every holiday, hoping to be called the proud daughter. I no longer checked my phone on Sundays to see if Mom had messaged. I no longer kept Kyle or Rachel's numbers in my contacts. Now, I kept them exactly where they chose to be. I had started a small group called Guardian Ledger, where I hosted free workshops on managing personal finances, avoiding banking scams, and protecting digital accounts, especially for older adults. The skills my family once mocked as out of touch had now become a shield for dozens of people against manipulation. At the first session, 76-year-old Ruth shared that her nephew nearly convinced her to transfer over $6,000 into an untraceable digital wallet, claiming he was helping her switch to online banking. She trembled recalling it, but laughed by the time I showed her how to enable two-factor authentication. That's when I realized, my strength didn't come from revenge. It came from turning what I knew into protection for others. I still worked at Carson and Hill, but on Saturdays I taught. On Sundays, I volunteered at a local legal aid circle. No media, no spotlights, just small coffee gatherings where people who'd been betrayed by family could speak without fear of judgment. I never went back to the house in Millview. I didn't restart any conversations. Mom called 3 times. Twice I didn't answer. Once I replied, "I'm doing fine, but I need space." No reply followed. One morning in early April, I received a handwritten letter. Cream-colored envelope, the handwriting unmistakable. Mom's. Inside was a single old photograph. Me, Kyle, and Rachel, sitting on the front porch as kids. I held a plastic trumpet. Rachel wore a princess dress. Kyle grinned, face smeared with birthday cake. Below the photo, written in blue ink, "We were wrong. But now I see. You deserve something better." I didn't cry. I didn't feel relief. I just folded the letter and placed it in a wooden memory box on my bookshelf. I didn't need another admission to know I had chosen the right path. I had let go, not out of weakness, but because I deserved a life where I didn't have to clear my name in my own family. One Saturday afternoon after class, Ruth took my hand and said, "I wish you were my daughter." I gently squeezed her hand and smiled. I can't replace anyone, but I can turn pain into something good. As I left the library, spring sunlight stretched long across the sidewalk. A little boy ran past holding a sandwich, followed by a young mother calling after him with a smile. None of them knew who I was. And they didn't have to. They simply saw a woman passing by. Ordinary, composed, and free. Free from expectations, free from forced obligations, free from hugs with strings attached. And to me, that's the truest definition of family. Not the place you're required to belong to, but the place where you're allowed to be yourself, even if that means walking there alone. Autumn's story is a powerful reminder that sometimes the people we love most can hurt us the deepest. But instead of drowning in pain and anger, she turned that loss into purpose, and that betrayal into meaningful action. In real life, anyone can find themselves misunderstood or cast aside by those who were supposed to protect them. But like Autumn did, you don't need to reclaim validation. You only need to stand in your truth and keep walking forward. What do you think of Autumn's decision? Would you have the courage to do the same? Share your thoughts in the comments below. And don't forget to follow the channel for more powerful stories about family and life.